Have you ever thought about investing in mortgage notes for passive income? Well, on this week's episode, I'm excited to bring on Fred Moskowitz as a guest. Fred is an educator and best-selling author who has trained countless investors from all walks of life on how to create passive income streams of their own. As a fund manager, Fred manages a mortgage note investment fund and is considered an industry veteran within the note investing arena. Fred teaches the concept that individual investors are able to step into the shoes of the lender through note investing and effectively be the bank. I had a great conversation with Fred and I learned a lot. I do want to emphasize that nothing here is considered investment advice or solicitation of any securities, purely for educational and entertainment purposes only. Introducing mortgage note investing expert, Fred Moskowitz. Welcome to the VJ Kyla Show. On this week's episode, I'm excited to bring on Fred Moskowitz. Fred, welcome to the show.
Thank you, VJ. It's great to be here.
Hey, it's great to have you here. You are an alternative investment expert, and I personally love the alternative space. And specifically, you work with real estate, but even more specific, note investing. So I'd love to just jump right into it and kind of hear about how you even got started in this space, because it's so niche, and how you got introduced to it.
Yeah, it's definitely a niche area for sure. So how I got started really comes back to my early days. I was working as a computer engineer and had a long, successful career with that. I spent a lot of time working at technology companies and startup companies. And what happened was I watched my entire industry get flipped upside down during the bursting of the dot-com bubble. And right around that same time, we had the September 11th terrorist attacks. And what I realized was that no matter how talented of an engineer I was or how valuable of an employee I was, the matter is that if things aren't going well at the company or in the industry at large, that I could quickly lose my job through no fault of my own. And so from that really started an interest inside of me to find other ways of generating income. And with that, I started to pursue alternative investments because what I wanted was to generate other sources of income so I wouldn't be so dependent on the paycheck for my job. And I got started with real estate investing. I was immediately drawn to that with a perspective of earning cash flow and revenue streams out of that. And over the years, through my real estate education, I started learning little bit by little about notes and how they're used in creative financing and structuring real estate deals. And I thought that was really interesting. And a number of years later, through some relationships that I had in the real estate investment communities, I had the opportunity to buy notes. Notes that were bank originated. They were being sold on the secondary market. And so when I saw that opportunity, I immediately recognized that. And that's really what got me started. I started note investing about back in 2010. So it's been 13 years. And it's been an exciting business. I've since then transitioned to exclusively focusing on the business of note investing. And as you said before, it is a niche within the niche of real estate. And we can get more into that as we go along.
I love it. Well, thanks so much for going through your story. It's really interesting. A lot of people, once you get that realization that, hey, your job can just lay you off for no fault of your own, that's when you start scrambling, start looking for more creative ways to invest or build more passive income, figure out something to protect yourself and your family, your loved ones. And it's coincidental that you fell into real estate. I mean, I don't even know if this statistic's accurate, but it's thrown around a lot. 90% of millionaires are millionaires because of real estate investing. And he took that and they decided to focus in on the notes space. So I think that's a great transition into.
Yeah, it is. It is. I love real estate as an asset class. There's so many benefits to it, right? From appreciation and tax advantages. And like you said, so many people have built wealth for themselves through real estate. and it's accessible to anyone. And so I really love that. But what I'm passionate about with alternative investments is really at a higher level, the broad idea of buying and building assets that you own. They generate income for you. You can control them, and it can be real estate. It can be mortgage notes. It can be rights and royalties if we're talking about a patent or a product or books or course online. These are all things that generate royalties for you and income. And so there's so many different directions that one can take that. So it's really something I love talking about and teaching about, because no matter what business you're in, what you do, there is a place for owning assets in your life. And I encourage everyone to look into that.
That's absolutely right. No matter where you are in stage of life, you should be investing in something. Maybe it's not real estate necessarily, but you need to invest in something that can potentially appreciate in value or provide cash flow. And so let's talk a little bit more about note investing. That's why we're here. Tell us about what are notes to begin with.
Note investing is the idea of buying and owning debt. And in this specific context, this debt is backed by real estate. So it's secured by collateral. And so you have your investment, it's generating a return for you. And just like the banks, all of these mortgage loans, they're backed by a mortgage. And so that's security for the investment. And no matter what happens, what you have done with what is done with a mortgage or a deed of trust, if we're talking about the western part of the United States, is that that's recorded as a lien and encumbrance against the property. And so when a property is going to be sold or refinanced, there's going to be a title search done, which will pull that up. And so all of those liens have to be cleared before the property is transferred, or the lender will require it if in the case of a refinance. And so note investing allows investors through the secondary market to go in and invest in that debt. And note investing, it's something that notes are part of most real estate transactions. Lots of people know about investing in real estate, single family houses or commercial property or multifamily or even short-term rentals, but not too many investors talk about investing in the paper, which is the notes and mortgages associated with those properties. And I find that it's a very interesting part of the real estate business. And for some reason, a lot of real estate investors, they don't pay any attention to it. And for most people, when they think of a note and a mortgage, they think about being the borrower and not as being the lender. But when you get involved in note investing, it allows you to step across the aisle and become the bank, so that you transition from being the one making the monthly payments to being the one that's receiving the monthly payments. And what this does is it's a great way which increases the predictability and consistency of your cash flow. And that's really a good spot to be in as an investor.
That's really interesting. So let's say these people don't pay their mortgage, you get to foreclose on their house. Is that how this works? So it's protected by real estate?
Yes, the loan is protected and backed by real estate. So if there is a default, there's a problem, there's always that security, and that property cannot be sold or transferred without resolving the lien. That's why when a bank originates a loan, a mortgage, they go and record on title the mortgage document itself. And that puts the entire world on notice that there's a lien against the property. And before title can be transferred, that needs to be addressed and handled. And so that's why the title company, if you've ever been through a transfer of real estate, right before closing, the title company runs a title search They identify all the liens against the property, and those all have to be addressed, either paid off or released by the lender before the title can transfer. And that's essentially what happens.
Got it. So now that we kind of understand what note is, can we back up a little bit and talk about physical execution of buying a note? So, for
Yeah.
example, for buying a stock, I have a brokerage account. I hit a buy button and I can buy the stock. How does this work if I want to buy a note?
So buying a note, it's a really straightforward transaction. I talk a lot about how this works in my book on note investing. But in reality, what happens is there's a purchase and sale agreement, just like real estate, that defines the transaction, and then the seller of the note will create a document called an assignment of mortgage, which transfers ownership to the new owner, and that gets recorded on title against the property. And then all the loan documents come in a big, thick file. They get sent over to the buyer, and the buyer reviews everything, make sure everything is there in the file, and then you go and record the document in the county courthouse where the property is located. I mean, that's really it. That's really it. And then at the same time, there's going to be a transfer of loan servicing, and we'll talk about what loan servicing is. But the loan servicer is a company that handles the day-to-day activities and aspects of managing the note. They handle collecting the payments. They handle keeping track of the accounting on the note. They take phone calls from the borrowers. They generate compliance letters. They generate the tax documents that have to be sent out each year for the borrower to prepare their tax return. So they do all of that, including creating a payoff statement if that's needed. And think of a loan servicing company as the same way a property manager manages a rental property on behalf of the owner. The servicing company manages the note on behalf of the lender or the investor. And so that's a major role. And so during the purchase of a loan, there's going to be a servicing transfer, right? Because you've already transferred the physical loan file, the loan documents and all that, and the funds for purchasing the note. Also, the servicing transfer happens in parallel so that the lender will be receiving their funds starting the following month, and they coordinate that with the borrower so that starting the next month, they're going to be making their payments to the new lender. And here's something, VJ, I'm sure a lot of you listeners out there can relate to this. Have you ever gone out, bought a property or refinanced a property, and maybe you start making your payments, and maybe between 3 to 6 months later, you get a letter from the lender saying, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Borrower, please be advised that your loan is being sold to the new lender. Here's their contact information. Here's their new address, their phone number. And starting next month, please send your payments to the new lender. And by the way, don't worry, none of the terms of your loan will change. The payment amount's the same. The interest rate, all of that is exactly the same. However, please make your payments to the new lender starting next month." And so that happens every day on the secondary market. Loans get bought and sold. And so this is something all of us have experienced. And it's the market, the secondary market. And so this happens with the large institutions, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They sell thousands and thousands of loans at a time in these huge transactions. They get bought by hedge funds, by mortgage-backed securities on Wall Street, by individual investors. And so this is how someone can really tap into that market, is through getting involved in the note industry, and then you have access to purchase notes.
Got it. So I definitely understand the packaging together for the MBSs and all that. I watched The Big Short like 8 times, so I understand that part now. But the question which I have is this available for individual investors, or do you have to go through an institution to get involved?
No, absolutely. It's available to individual investors. Now, it won't be at the same scale, obviously, but there are notes are sold by smaller note funds, smaller hedge funds. They will sell notes individually, maybe in a pool of five loans or one or two loans at a time. Absolutely. And in our industry, a lot of us, we all know each other and we all sell loans. We buy and sell from each other all the time. And so, wherever you are in this space, there's a place for you. But absolutely, individual investors can buy notes. And one strategy that I love so much for individual investors is buying using your retirement account. We can talk more about that, but that's a great strategy for when you're buying one or two loans at a time.
Got it. So I kind of want to back up just a little bit, just so I kind of understand this a little bit better. Do you assume the role of the bank when you basically invest in these loans? So for example, let's say there's a house for $100,000. Usually people put up 20,000. You as a bank would lend 80,000.
Yes.
Do you have to actually have that 80,000 or do you use some sort of fractional reserve banking like other banks, or do you actually act like a bank in this transaction?
No, you have the cash. So
Okay, so you have the full 80,000.
you're fully capitalized on that. Absolutely. And so that's a very important aspect. Note investing requires capital. And so either you raise that capital through other assets you have or raise it from investors. But what's common is a lot of people I see that have a lot of real estate, they've made money and have built a lot of equity in real estate. They may sell off some properties and then turn around and invest that into notes because you can earn a higher rate of return by doing that.
So you would basically, if you have $80,000, you would basically lend the money to a private home buyer. Is that how it works, or do you have to kind of buy it from Wall Street in packaged securities?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you can lend it to a home buyer, absolutely. You can do that and be the one originating the loan or buy a note that exists already. I personally focus on the side of the business where we're buying notes that exist already. And one of the big benefits of that is notes are bought and sold at a discount. So that $80,000 loan that may sell for 75,000, or depending on the characteristics of the mortgage and the risk profile, it could be sold for less than that. And so that starts to impact the rate of return and the characteristics of the loan. So that's the area I specifically focus on in the business, is not originating loans, but we're buying them on the secondary market after they've been traded already from the original lender.
Got it. No, that clears up all my questions. Thank you for going through that. So once you buy these loans, are you buying individual loans and building your own portfolio, or do you already buy prepackaged loans?
You can do both. You can do both. Both are available. For what we do, usually we're buying pools of loans. We're buying in quantity. Some of the benefits of that are you're dealing with larger transaction sizes. There's more efficiency. You can negotiate a little bit of a better of a discount that way. It doesn't have to be that way. I've bought individual notes plenty of times as well, but it really comes down to the level of business that you're active in. But if you have a lot of capital to deploy, then obviously it's going to make more sense to buy in quantity.
Got it. Okay. So earlier you mentioned people who used to invest in real estate, they sell their holdings. Now they have a bunch of capital. Now they invest in notes because they may earn a better return. Could you talk about how the return is that much better than the capital appreciation from real estate?
Yeah, it's better in that when you buy at a discount, it's like with real estate. Everyone who invests in real estate wants to buy $100,000 property for 90,000 and make money. You make money when you buy. Well, the same thing happens with note investing, and so that's customary. A lot of people don't realize it, that loans are sold for lower than the face value, and so that's an important aspect. But along with that, it really comes down to types of notes you buy. And like any other investment, the more risk you're comfortable comfortable with, the higher rate of return that you can earn. Right. It really, really comes down to that. So the real estate guys, they understand this business very well, being in the shoes of the borrower many, many times, because most real estate investing is done with financing as part of the transaction. But it really, some of the advantages, it allows you to scale. You can scale into a big portfolio rather easily. And it's a nice way to diversify, because while I love owning real estate, I think it's wonderful. There's a lot of benefits to it. I also love owning notes as well. It's a lot less work overall because of the vendors we have in place. And once you have that loan and servicing set up with a servicer, it's really just a steady cash flow and income that comes in. And so usually there's not much work involved beyond the initial due diligence when you buy the note. Now, with real estate, you have the ongoing responsibilities of maintenance and upkeep and property management and all of those things. Nothing wrong with that. It's just a different animal. And so I say diversify. Why not have a little of both? But I see this often with property owners that have been in the game for a while. They really warm up to the idea of earning cash flow and income without having the responsibilities of being a property owner. And,
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
yeah, lenders, banks have figured this out so long ago that they'd rather be on title as a lien holder on the property instead of being the property owner. They figured this out long ago. And you see this as a real estate investor. If a bank ever has a property, they want to get it sold as quickly as possible. And then the end result is they recapitalize, and then they turn around and originate a new loan for someone else.
Got it. So I know it's all interest payments coming in. So interest is unfortunately taxed at a very high amount. And that's why you mentioned IRAs or self-directed IRAs earlier. Could we talk about how to mitigate taxes?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a huge distinction with owning notes. Note investing, it generates a lot of tax liability. You get interest income, you get capital gains, and that's it. There's no deductions, there's no depreciation, none of that. And so you're going to generate tax liability, especially if you're doing well in the industry. And so what I always love to talk about is, do you have retirement account funds? Do you have a Roth IRA or 401k from a prior employer? Because if you do, and you can use that money to invest in notes in a tax advantaged way, that becomes very powerful, because when you combine the higher rates of return along with the tax advantage treatment, your account value starts to really grow at an amazing rate. And most people do have retirement account capital. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't know that they can use that to invest. There's so many options out there beyond the 6 options that your 401k plan administrator put in front of you, which, by the way, it's like all stock market 100%. And so if you're seeking to diversify a little bit, you can do deals in your retirement account. You can own real estate, you can own notes, you can own a small business even. I mean, there's so many powerful strategies there, but the tax treatment, it is unmatched. And so I always teach and talk about this concept of invest using your retirement account, find ways to do it, learn about it. It's not something you learn in school. You got to take that education on your own, but learn about it and get good at it. I have actually, in my note investing book, I dedicated an entire chapter just to this concept alone, because I'm looking to spread the word. I want to teach people. I think it's one of the most powerful and underused strategies that we have available to us.
No, that's definitely right. Using retirement accounts is probably one of the best ways to invest in things that you normally would have to pay taxes for. I know that wealthy people, they don't necessarily have the funds in a retirement account because they maybe had a business, or maybe they sold their business. Now they're sitting on, let's say, $1 million in cash. How could they get involved without necessarily taking a giant tax hit?
That's going to require a little more advanced tax planning and strategies. That's definitely way above my pay grade. I mean, there's a lot of ways, but if anyone's a business owner, you are able to set up a retirement plan as the business owner. Anyone can do that. So you can set up a 401k, and then you have huge contribution limits. An IRA's contribution limit might be $6,000 or $7,000 a year, but if you have a 401k that you're self-directing and it's in your business, your contribution limit is much higher. And so that opens up a lot of avenues. But definitely consult with your CPA, your advisors, and they will direct you on some of these different strategies that you can use that are available to everyone. These are right in the tax code. And a lot of people mistakenly think that, oh, these are only for the ultra rich, the ultra wealthy can use these loopholes. And you hear about that all the time in the news. And nothing can be further from the truth. These are in the tax code. They're available to anyone. And the government, our federal government, believes that small business ownership is something very important for our country, for our economy, and they create many tax incentives for business owners. So if you have a business, small business, or a side hustle that you've turned into a business, you can absolutely set up a retirement plan and learn how to get good at utilizing that and benefiting from those tax advantages.
Well, that's great. I definitely would agree. Start learning how to invest your money through retirement accounts, and you'll be in a way better position because of compounding interest working for decades, right? That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
without being subject to tax. Yeah. I mean, if you look at charts that show the growth of $100,000 over 30 years, where it's being subject to taxes each time, as opposed to if that money were in a Roth IRA and there was no tax at all, except when you made your contribution, there's an exponential difference in those two graph lines. I mean, it's amazing. It's really powerful. When you look at the growth over long term, like 20 or 30 years, it's mind boggling.
Absolutely. Fred, could you talk a little bit more about your book?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. My book is called The Little Green Book of Note Investing, and I wrote it to provide a high level overview and introductory guide for anyone that's interested in learning about this amazing asset class. We talk about how the note industry works and how to find notes, how to analyze them, as well as how to conduct due diligence and managing a note portfolio. We talk about whether you invest in notes individually or you may want to invest in a note fund where everything is professionally managed for you and it's a lot more passive. So how do you go about evaluating that and determining which is the best fit for you as an investor? And so there's so many different areas, but really it's a great primer, a great introductory guide for anyone seeking to learn about this asset class.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely put that in the show notes for everyone that wants to grab a copy. Fred, do you have a recommended book that is not your own?
Oh, wow. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One book that I love so much is the book Start With Why by Simon Sinek. Super powerful, especially for anyone getting into business or getting into investing. Learning your why is a huge part of your motivation. And that's what this book gets to. It's understanding what's the motivation behind why you're doing what you're doing. Because if you have a strong purpose, a strong why, that's going to be what keeps you motivated and keeps you going during the difficult times, during those dark days. Because trust me, being a business owner, being an investor, it's not always pleasant. There's going to be some tough times. And this is what carries you through. So that's been a really impactful book, and I highly recommend it.
It's a fantastic book. I remember watching his YouTube video years ago, and that's how I even heard of Simon. I think it was a TED Talk or something like that, and it was great. So definitely do recommend that book as well. And Fred, do you have a piece of advice for the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Here is wonderful piece of advice that I love so much. And little background on it. I'm a guy from Philadelphia. I'm from Philadelphia. And so I look to one of our founding fathers of this country, who is Benjamin Franklin. He was a brilliant mind, brilliant. So many inventions and ideas and concepts that he left us with. But I love this quote that he left us, and that is that an investment in knowledge always pays the highest dividends. And so the lesson is to always be investing in yourself. Always set aside a portion of money in your personal budget each year for your own education and growth. And when you invest in your skills, whether it's business or investing, anything that you do professionally, that's going to return so much for you, so much more than the time you put in, so much more than the money you spent. And it's something that can never be taken away from you. And so always look to be a lifelong learner, invest in your own education, your own growth, and that's going to carry you forward no matter what you do.
I love that piece of advice. Don't invest in the S&P 500, but invest in the S&Me 500, right?
Yeah, exactly, VJ, exactly.
That's wonderful. Fred, where can our audience get in touch with you, or who would be a great client for someone to reach out to you and get to know you better?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love networking and speaking with investors. Best way to connect with me is to go to my website, which is fredmoskowitz.com. And if you prefer a little bit of an easier spelling, you can visit giftfromfred.com, and that will route you right to my website. And once you're there, you can sign up for my newsletter. You can request a special report I have on note investing. I'd be happy to email that out. And if anyone prefers to use their mobile device, if you like texting, you can also text me by texting the keyword money to the number 215-461-4433. I always love connecting with investors, building relationships. It's such a powerful activity, and look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Awesome. I'll link all this in the show notes. Fred, thank you so much for your time. Learned a lot. I think note investing is really cool and something I definitely need to dive into and learn a little bit more about.
Great. Thank you, VJ.
Hey, it's VJ. If you liked this video, you're going to love this video. Make sure you click it, leave questions in the comments, and I'm here to help however I can. Hope you have a great day.